Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Lemos, and I will be your host for today. By show of hands, along with the chat pane is, if you can, right next to your name, signal in the hand so that I can see that you have audio and that you're able to listen to me right now. Please go. Okay, thank you so much. As well, by show of hand, if you can see my screen, um, again, start showing your hands as well. Okay, most of you can see my screen as well, if not all. Thing one, put up a question mark. Okay. Sorry, I cannot hear. Okay. All right, so it looks like everyone can see my screen and everyone can hear me. So that's about all we need for now. All right, guys. Well, as you might know, the class that we're joining today is going to be with regards to making the perfect case creation. Okay, so with that in mind, um, I'm going to start talking about intake forms. Okay, intake form is going to be the most efficient way of creating cases. Okay, now some of you might already hopefully have the knowledge of what intake forms are. If not, this is the class for you. I always like to start off by saying there's always the basic way of creating cases, which is just adding the names, adding the matters, as we call them, or cases into the system, and then linking them together. When you're linking, obviously, the names that you have in your database or with some of the cases that you're creating, then obviously that is part of the very basic 101 case creation. Now, wouldn't it be nice, though, that instead of having to go through the manual process, what I like to call manual process of going to your matters icon here, searching to see, for example, if there is a matter with the name that you're trying to add, right? If I go Victoria and I'm trying to type in the name Victoria, I see that there is no such matter already created. Then I can proceed to clicking on the add button. So when I proceed to the clicking on the add button, I can then enter in my case. Still, this is the very basic way of doing things, right? You create your case, and in the same context, you would also create a name record. So at the end of the day, you're creating a matter, and then you're creating names, and then you're linking them together. Okay, now some of you might be doing this already, and that would be okay if you want to do it as manual as possible. In other words, create the matter, create any names that you need to create, and again, the linking. Now, the more efficient way of doing all of this is going to be through your intake form, because the intake form is going to do all of that for you in one step. That one step is going to be if you click on the intake form. For the purposes of this demonstration today, we're going to use what we call the divorce intake form. So that's going to be under your Abacus family intake forms, and then we're going to have the Abacus family law divorce case intake form. The divorce intake form. Okay, so in here, you can see once I click on it. And by the way, in case you're wondering why some of you might have intake forms, it's because you have what we call the PALS, okay, Practice Area Legal Solutions. And the practice area legal solutions come with intake forms, specific matter screens, specific name screens, specific rules, okay, that are based for calendaring. So obviously, if you don't have any of these choices that you're seeing here, it's because you don't have what we call PALs, okay? If you do, then obviously you've seen this before, hopefully, and you've used it already. If you haven't, this is what, by all means, the best way of creating a case because, again, it's more efficient when it comes to having everything done in one step. So once I click on my divorce case here, you will notice that there is a section for my matters at the top about my case. Okay, there's information about my client or my name information. There's going to be more information about the opposing party and the spouse that I can fill in and the opposing counsel. So at the end of the day, as I am filling one form, not only am I creating one matter, and creating all the names that are going to be associated with that matter. But I am also going to have what we call the build to link. Now, the build to link, okay, is going to assist you with regards to later on billing that particular case or matter if you decide to use those billing features from Abacus. So it's not only going to give you, again, the matter being created, the names being created, and the linking being done. By the same token, if you're wondering, how can I go in and double check to see if the matters have already been created? Let's just say, for example, that you do have colleagues, you have more than one colleague, as their sole responsibility is to create cases. So if you ever wonder, what can I check to see if a matter already exists before I start even creating it? And the answer is yes. You'll be able to go into use existing matter, click on that, and then you can then see, start typing again. We started with the word Victoria, as I was saying before. I clicked on Victoria and then say Victoria doesn't show up. Okay, well, that means that it's not within my browsers. Sorry, that means that I browsed through all my matters and it's not there. So all I'm going to do is hit cancel, and then I can enter in the matter information within my matter intake form that I have in front of me. Then you can proceed of filling out the matter information, and then the same concept is going to apply towards the client or name that you're filling out. So you can see always you're going to see these use existing matter, use existing name options available in each of the sections, because it's going to allow you to check to see if someone within your office has already created those or not. Okay, so at the end of the day, you are double checking to see if it is already within your names browse or your matters browse, and if not, it's just as simple as enter the information here. As you enter the information for your matter, and as you enter the information for your names, whether it's a client, whether it's an opposing party, or whether it's a counsel, that link will also be created automatically. So that is already saving you a step if you were to do it the old-fashioned way. Well, I wish I call it old-fashioned, but the very basic way, which is creating the matter, creating the names, then doing the linking of each name with the matter. Here is cutting the work in half by simply not only entering the name, but also creating the link for you. Okay? So within that, depending on the forms that you're using as well, you can also have multiple links created at once. For example, what I'm entering in here, not only would it create a client link to the matter, but it also create a build to link to the client, and by also will create probably a plaintiff link to the client. Okay, you actually have the ability to pre-configure the whatever name you entered in here. You can call it as you want to see fit. It could be a petitioner instead of a plaintiff, let's say, right? So you can actually pre-program that behind the scenes in what we call the intake form manager. So if you weren't aware um, of those features, we can definitely talk about that a little bit later on. Just so you know, you do have an allotted time later on in the training where you can start asking questions, and I can obviously field questions then. But just know that that has that ability to do so. So the intake form, again, is not only just creating the matter at once, while it's creating the names and the links as well, okay? But it's and the build too, as I had mentioned, but is also doing what we're calling this section here, which is going to be creating the subsequent action items for any individual case that need to be handled. Okay, look at it this way, as I like to put it out. Okay, when you're creating cases, depending on the practice area that you're in, you're going to have subsequent action items that need to be handled by your staff or by your day-to-day operations. Obviously, we're talking about a divorce case. It's going to be different than an immigration case or a PI case, a personal injury, right? So if you are in an office or in a law firm that practices multiple laws, not just one given area of law, right? You can have for each one of these different types of cases or matters that you're creating, you can have subsequent action items being deliberately sent or scheduled to your calendars as reminders for specifically individuals that are going to be handling it. So for example, you see how it says select the WHO code for calendar events here? And it says responsible attorney. Well, actually, make pretend it says firm member or staff member. right? I have the initials of the individuals that should be receiving on their calendar or scheduled on their calendar subsequent action items that need to be handled right after the intake form is created. To put this into terms and to better and as a better example, I'm going to give you a what we call a rule. So just imagine that every single intake form has a rule attached to it. If you're wondering what a rule is multiple events related to one another that can be set up within a specific timeline. So, for example, let's call the rule that's attached to this new divorce intake form, let's call it a new case divorce, right? And then, generally speaking, let's just assume the following events are already associated with this new case rule. You can have 4, 5, 6, 10, as many as you like associated, as long as that's something that you want a calendar to specific individuals to handle right after the case is open. So in my example, I'm going to give you um, for the new case that someone needs to meet with a client for the first time, right? I want that to happen the next day after I open up my intake form. Well, someone needs to open up the billing account so that we can later on bill the client. Maybe that needs to happen one day after as well, so the attorneys can start entering their time, or the legal paralegals or the legal assistants, right? What if someone needs to write a confirmation letter, but that needs to be done 5 days out? Okay, that is all going to happen as long as you have that pre-programmed or pre-configured and attached to any one of the intake forms that you like. And we'll talk about that process a little bit later on how you go behind the scenes, sort of, and actually have that set up. Then you need maybe someone to draft a fee contract, but you want that 14 days out. So as you can see, these are examples, again, of subsequent action items that need to be handled right after the intake form is done. And the individuals that I am putting in here, as far as the initials are concerned, those are the individuals that in their calendar in Abacus Law will receive them as a reminder. Okay, so that can be a very good way of notifying, let's say, the attorney that a matter has been open. Maybe at the beginning he just, has to get, yeah, he can get all the actual action items to show up on his schedule, but maybe he wants to get rid of them after the fact and he doesn't want to see them. That could be also modified, but that's after the case creation has been already done. Okay, so at the end of the day, what I basically am trying to say is, depending on how many practice areas you may or may not have, you have the ability to modify each rule that you're attaching within each intake form and let it be specific to those cases that you're opening. So at the end of the day, you're streamlining the process of how to handle or the action items that need to be handled right after the intake form is filled out, and you're going to be doing this for each different type of case. So a lot of folks are really in love with this because they can really automate it and make it personalize it to their liking. So it really streamlines the entire process of the case creation. At the end, when you have fill out all your matter information, your names information, right? And you've assigned the individuals that are going to be handling the subsequent action items. And the bill to, all you got to do is hit create records and close. And once you do that, that's going to generate, okay, a matter that looks like this, more or less. So if I were to pull up Andrea Amarillo here as my divorce case, if I go to my linked names, for example, this is one that I created strictly off of an intake form. The only thing that I added after the fact was my child one. So once the matter is created, all of these links are already there. The bill to link, the client, the spouse, right? The opposing counsel, and the spouse. All of this information came directly from that intake form. If I didn't do it through my intake form, I would have had to create this matter and then go into my names, create all these names, and then come back in here into my link names, and then link each one at a time by clicking on add link, highlighting the name, selecting it, and then the type of link that I would have done. So if I go in here and then I go, oh, this is my second child, I'm just making this up as an example, and I click on done, then you would then see, oh, first child, second child, along with everything else that came from my intake form. The idea behind the intake form is that it's going to facilitate and it's going to be more convenient for you to go through the intake form because it's a lot more efficient. as in not having to do this manually after the fact. Does this mean that you can't go in and add more links to the, in other words, add more names and link them as they're related to specific case or matter? Of course you can do that. You have the ability to do so after the fact. But wouldn't it be nice to do that right off the bat the minute that you open up through the intake form? And that's basically, at the end of the day, why the intake form is so important. Now, as long along the lines of that, not only would you have all the divorce information within your matter filled out as much as you've filled out already, right? You would also have all the linked names, but you would also have the events. The events section, it's the subsequent action items I was referring to. Okay. Yes, there's someone made an observation that there's a lot of background noise. So if you guys can mute yourself just in case, so that way some of us have the ability to listen to as clear as possible. Okay. So again, the event section here that comes through is going to be related with the intake form. So once I did it through the intake form, all of this information was already in my history of all my events. The idea being here that if you ever then wanted to, like I said, adjust or modify or edit any of who is receiving these as reminders on their calendars, any one of you that are already within the group that received that can go in into the who and change that to just, I don't know, limited to just the staff member, so the attorney themselves don't need to see it. They just wanted to see it at first so that, okay, they've been notified, the matter's open, now I can go in and start entering some time, right? But if I hit done, just like that, you see how I just edit that section? Maybe the BD is the only person that should be handling the billing account, right? And then the rest, no, there's no need for them to have it in their calendars anymore. Same concept applies for if the confirmation letter is being handled by DSW and CP, right? So I can go CP, DSW, right? You can type that in like that, or you could have simply clicked on the lookup, go back in here, said CP, DSW, and that way you will then see that those are the only two individuals that will be seeing or viewing in their calendars those particular um, action items. Okay, so again, it's a matter of understanding whether you want to do everything in one move or one form, as through the intake form, where it's going to give you, again, not only the matters, the names, the linking, but also have all the events already in place here and all of the link names as well already provided for you. Now, you're probably wondering, why is it so important to have all the link names within this link names tab? If you've done any forms or if you generated any forms, you by now know that this is going to directly affect the forms generation process. Okay? So if you want ultimately certain forms to be filled out, you need to then let Abacus know, right, what particular names are being associated with the case. So the proper linking needs to be done on that end. So instead of having to do that manually, as I mentioned before, and doing it here, again, the intake process takes care of that. Okay? Look at it this way. If you were to have a spouse, right, and you need to fill out the spouse information, the spouse information in the form, just to even have their name or even their address. Well, clearly, you need to identify who the spouse is and link that name from your database to your matter. And you have to have it here, because without that proper linking, how would Abacus know that Rodney Williams is the spouse in this particular case or matter, and therefore then fill it out in the map in the form itself? So map it out into the form. Obviously, information in, information out. So again, the intake form allows us to not only do all the proper linking, but also make sure that that's already there. So that's one less step that you have to take care of. So at the end of the day, the intake form is not only just facilitating you to have all the matter information within the matter here, but also assisting you in forms generation. Okay. I did make mention of how can we pre-configure behind the scenes, right, when it comes to the intake form alone. So let me just bring one intake form again so that you see exactly what I'm referring to. I'm going to have this intake form open in the background. Okay, so this information at the top is related with my matter. Okay, this information with my client. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit so that you can see exactly what I'm referring to when I try to see it in my intake form manager. The intake form manager is going to be under File, Setup, and then I'm going to go under Intake Form Manager. So what I'm doing here is what I call behind the scenes. Is I have the ability to edit or pre-configure, I should say, or modify really, um, everything that's in my current intake form. So if I go to Intake Form Manager, and I'm specifically speaking about the divorce intake form. So if you guys have the PALs, you have all of this available to you. If you don't have to say the family law PAL, you're not going to have this behind the scenes so that you can pre-configure. So I want to look for my Abacus Family Law Divorce Case Intake Form. So if I want to, again, set it up properly or modify or pre-configure behind the scenes, I'm going to highlight it and then I'm going to go to Edit. When it comes up, as you can see, okay, this is too small, and hence why I like it to have it open here in the background. So this basically is that form, but you can't scroll down or anything. When I go to my record section, I can see that the first record I have at the top, remember we saw that, was my matter. Okay? You see the first name that is being showcased? See how it says that the link types or codes are already behind the scene? The minute you put a name within that name section, like in here, enter the client, see how it says build to end client? That means it's creating a build to link and it's creating a client link. And that's exactly what we wanted in this particular case. But if some of you come to me and say, well, Benfu, honestly, not every client of ours is going to be end up being the person we send the invoice to, or the bill to client, the person that's going to be receiving the invoice. And then therefore, you don't want automatically whoever is your client to also be the bill to. And by the way, the bill to serves dual purpose. The bill to is not only to see who you're sending the invoice to when you finally generate it, but it also to make sure that that particular case or matter that you've created in AbacusLaw actually exists also in billing, and therefore allowing you to actually generate an invoice. Okay, so if that's something along the lines that you wanted to change or add, you could do that modification here. Or let's say you wanted to say, well, whoever my client is, I also want to make them a petitioner. Well, by all means, this is where you would have to go to add a petitioner as a link as well. So highlight names, go to edit properties. Okay, you see here at the top where it says link type, and I already click on that. See, the build tool's already checked. Same thing with client, right? And now if you want a petitioner, you could also add petitioner to the mix. You either start typing it up, and it should appear somehow. File petition, petitioner, right? And if you wanted to add a link as a petitioner, you can also do so. So these are the kind of things that you can do, again, behind the scenes as creating all these link types that I was referring to, right? You just did his names and the spouse and then the opposing counsel. So by this same concept, if you notice, can you add another name if you wanted to, to the mix, another name section? The answer is yes. That's a little bit more advanced, but you do have the ability to do so. So just know that at the end of the day, since you're catering towards your specific firm, you want to ensure that if you wanted to, you can streamline this intake process even more than what already is. Okay, and this is where you would do it behind the scenes, as far as adding types of links and adding, of course, any more name section if you want to. Okay, along those lines, you can also make sure that you're changing what we call the rules. Okay, so as far as the rules concerned, okay, first you would have to change the rule that is being embedded within each intake form. Identify that, and then you can modify it if you want it. Okay, and if you were to modify it, let me just show you really quick where you would do that. So you would highlight this. Again, you would go back to edit. The rule is always going to reside in what we call events. So you, instead of going to the matter record or name record, you go to the events record. Under the events record, again, same concept. You're going to go to edit properties. And under the edit properties, where is the actual event located? It's a what code. Okay. I don't know if some of you have dealt with rules before, but rules will have a what code. So you go into the what code like this, and then you will click on edit field. Once you click on edit field, the default value as of right now for this particular intake form, the divorce, the family law divorce intake form, case intake form, is right now is just called new case. If any one of you would decide to modify and make your own rule that should be embedded with this intake form for divorce, then by all means, let's go create it, then come back here and pull it and call it, I don't know, Victoria VIC new case. That would be Vic new case, and that would be the rule, right, that you would be using more catered to your specific needs for that specific intake form. And this is where you would come and enter it. So now every time you generate a new matter using that particular intake form is going to have exactly the subsequent action items that you want. Okay, so for you to see the big picture really quick, I'm going to go and show you, and I'm not going to save anything, how the rules work so you can see it, and then from there, see exactly what I'm referring to. So if I go File, Setup, and I go to Rules, okay, for fun, let's type in the new case so you can see that one already exists, of course, because you have had an idea, but if you wanted to modify it, you can always clone a rule. So let's say you like the building blocks or the foundation of this new case. First of all, you're saying, well, I don't even know what the new case has, right? I just highlighted for you, but I really didn't do anything other than that. So if you wanted to take a gander or take a look at what makes or what comprises makes up the new case rule, just highlight the rule that you're looking for and hit edit. Again, this is a very standard new case rule that we have by default embedded within most of the intake forms that you have already purchased. But this doesn't mean that you can't go in here and modify it yourself. Okay, you can always do that. You can always make modifications to anything that is a rule that's being attached to any one of your cases. So what I like to tell everyone is, okay, take a look at the rule, analyze it, as in look at the description, look at the number of events that it has, because you can have 5, 10, 11, whatever, 20 events. So if you want it right off the bat, the minute you create the intake forms, to have everything scheduled in your calendars with specific work descriptions and or flow to it, this is where you need to make sure that you are modifying it so that it can then be streamlined from the very beginning, as in when you create the intake form. Okay, so let's go over this so you have an idea what makes up a rule, right? The what is going to be the type of code, right? That's going to describe my actual action item that I have to do. First meeting with a client, we've decided to call that meet as a what code. And by the way, in case you're wondering, there is a limit as in 8 characters as to what the what code can be. That's why this is conflict. That's why this is open file, ledger, letter, and draft. Okay, let's say you like this foundation, but maybe you don't like do conflict of interest check. I can do without the conflict of interest check because technically you should be doing that prior to opening a case. So you say, I like this, I don't like the conflict of interest check, and I can change these days around. The interval is the day, as of the day that you open the matter, or whatever it is that is being calendared on when you go to the calendar, right? Because remember, a rule is not only just for intake process. A rule can be for any particular workflow that you might want to use within the lifespan of a particular case, right? So right now it's saying that I want to write the confirmation letter 7 days later. Okay, well, is that okay with you? Is 7 days okay? Or you want to maybe speed that up a little bit and make it 5? Well, we can make that change as well. So you get the idea. But before we even start making any changes, what I always recommend everyone to do is take a look at the original. Do not edit the original rule. Simply see what's there, and even better yet, and this is for any rule that's out there that you may have, I recommend that you print it, right? When you click print, it says report rules with rules list with matter, and it's going to say output to screen. I like doing this because let's say you were to collaborate and it's supposed to be a group of you, and you want to see, okay, well, meet, conflict, so forth and so on, and then you scroll a little bit to the right, and you have your filing descriptions and conflict of interest checks and whatnot. Maybe maybe each one of you has a suggestion as to what you should do. So then that way you guys meet together, you fix it. And then when you guys have decided on what exactly it is you want to make the changes to, one person can come in and change that rule. So where are we going to make those changes? And where can we work off as opposed to just working off of the original? All you have to do is go back to the rules, go to the new case, just highlight it again because that was the rule you saw, and you're going to click on clone. Clone as in save as. Think about it that way, right? You're using a save as, and then you're going to make your own. So click on clone, and then here it says new case. You see how I've had a bunch of new examples? Because I've obviously have called this differently, every single time I bring something up. So I'm just going to say VIC, and I'm going to call it NW, as in VIC, new case. Okay, that's going to be the name of my rule. Again, I am limited to 8 characters, hence why I just decided to put 5 there. So NW is not good. Maybe NC is better, right? New case, VIC, new case. I'm going to click on done. The description, okay, then you can spell out whatever it is. VIC, and then you can say new case, or new case for divorce, whatever it is that you want to put in the description. Then when you click on done, then you're back here. Now you're able to do all the edits. Oh, a conflict of interest check, I can do without. I don't mind it. So you can highlight that and you can simply delete it. So are you sure you want to delete this event? Yes. Simple as that. I got rid of one of the action items and I modified that modification already in place for my new rule, Vic new case. Okay, let's change this from 7 to 5. Just double click on it, go to your interval and make it 5. And as simple as that, it's gone. Now I just made that change. Again, I'll repeat it. You're going to go to the letter. You can see that that's the confirmation letter. You saw that the interval was 5. I just went to and I changed the number. What if we want to give, instead of to it be go specific, let's say open the billing account, it's only supposed to be handled by the billing person. Well, when you open up the intake form, and you saw, I don't know if you recall right now, but in the details that I gave you, I had 5 individuals in my intake form, as in them getting a rule update on their calendars, right? So 5 individuals are there, but you're saying that there's only one billing person in the whole firm. So there's no reason for everyone to get that as opposed to just one person because they're the only ones going to handle it anyways. So if I double click on here on my event, and then I just want to make changes so that that one person gets it all the time, I'm going to go to event details, and under who code, I'm going to go to the who code again here, and I'm going to say, well, CP is my um, staff member that handles my billing all the time. So I click on done, as in CP, I click on done again, and just like that, instead of having everyone get it, as in when you're filling out the intake form, the individuals that you list there, only CP will get it because this will override whatever you had in the intake form. If you leave it blank, as in these other ones, then everyone, for the most part, that you listed on the intake form as individuals will actually get the rest of these action items within this rule. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to jump into is whether you like to receive most of these um, intake forms, action items in your calendar as reminders or as things to do or even as appointments. Because in the rule here, you can make modifications to it as such as well. So Let me show you. If I double click on confirmation letter and I go to my event details, under my time, okay, if you see time and then you see a field right next to it, that means that everything that's going to be calendar is going to be calendar as a reminder. If I right click here, and by default, all of them are going to be reminders. So I don't know how many of you are well versed in the different types of calendar items that we have. We have reminders, we have things to do, we have calls to make, we have obviously appointments. Okay, some people prefer things to do over reminders because things to do, if not completed on that given day, will automatically be rolled over to the next business day. Okay, reminders don't roll over. Okay, so a lot of folks don't like that, and therefore, if they don't complete something by the end of the day or mark it as done, it'll roll over to the next day. So instead of having this as a reminder set up from the very beginning, or from the very top, when you're just creating cases, you might want to go in here, right click, and then make it a to do. And by all means, if you're not going to make it a to do, maybe you want to schedule a time of when that, I don't know, maybe the billing person is used to, or sorry, this is not a billing person, this is a confirmation letter. You're used to writing your confirmation letter starting at 3 p.m. And maybe you want a calendar right off the bat. So on whatever date this falls, it'll know to schedule you a 3 p.m. Meeting or action item in your calendar. So you do have these options. So a lot of folks like changing it from reminder to a to do as a basic setting. So just like that, even the slightest of modifications, whether I'm changing the day, right, from 7 to 5, or I'm changing the who code of who's overriding, of who should be receiving this on their calendar, or even as setting it as what, a reminder, and things to do, calls to make, whatever the case may be, right? You have that ability here to make those changes. When you're done with all this, all you have to do is click on done and click on done again. So now I made all the changes to my rule. Now what do I want to do? Well, you want to apply that to that intake form that we were referring to. So go back to your file, setup, intake form manager, go grab the one for the divorce, right, which is this one, and then you're going to edit it. When you go to edit, you're going to go to records, and in records, remember where it is located. Remember that a rule is a what code. What codes are going to be under what? Events, right? So I'm going to click on events, click on edit properties. Again, my rule resides in a what code. It's not a who code. It's not a when code, right? It's a what code. So what is to be done? I'm going to click on what. I'm going to hit edit field, and then I'm going to go into where it says default value. I don't want it to be new case anymore. I want it to be VIC and C. Remember? That was the name of my new rule that I wanted. So clearly, if I want to make this change, I would have to come in here, put VICNC, hit done, and going forward, every time a new intake form is generated for a divorce matter, it will then have all of those action items as I had it modified, created for that particular case. I'm not going to do that, of course, but now you have an idea of how that's done. So as you can see from what we've covered, there's plenty of flexibility when it comes to creating a case that's going to automate the whole way through, including specific types of action items that you want to embed within each one of your intake forms. And that, of course, has to do with the different types of cases that you might have. So for those firms that have multiple areas of practice of law, right, you guys can have one different for immigration. You guys can have one for family law. And then within family law, you can have one for adoption, divorce, domestic violence, guardianship, right? These might all be different from one another, and they can be specific. Every time you're creating a new case, wouldn't it be nice for everything to be calendared and to the right people as maybe things to do of what they got to handle on a day-to-day basis every time they open a different type of case? This is what we're talking about when we're trying to be efficient with our intake forms. Okay, and it's a great way, honestly, to start creating your cases.
and then from there flowing through all the way through, eventually billing the client. So that's all I was going to have for today. I'm going to open it up for questions now. So please, if you have questions, go ahead and start typing them up under your questions chat, which are going to be on your GoToMeeting panel in your questions box. Okay. Okay, there's one question here, and it's related with as if we wanted to have more one-on-one trainings with regards to what you went over, and you needed us to be walked through these specific type of cases. Where can I go? And at the same time, what are the others? What are the some of the other trainings that you offer that are one-on-one? So if you, I don't know if you guys have had a chance before or not, but if you go to abacusnext.com, we do have all the way at the bottom, okay, and some of you have done this already. There's going to be called what we call a schedule a service option, okay. When you click on that, you will be able to see that it's going to take you to the terms and condition of these trainings that we have to offer. So clearly you would click on next, and after that, obviously the product that we're in right now is Abacus Law, so you would click on Abacus Law. Having said that, within here, the first option is implementation and customization. That is if you haven't had it installed. That's nothing to do with training. That's a completely different setup. But with regards to the training that you're supposed to have, there's a breakdown between two different things. Okay, um, and by that I mean you have the option of the general or onboarding training for Abacus Law, in other words, case of practice management. Okay, if you haven't had the onboarding training, this is what you would normally have to do: from administrative training, entering, editing data, creating and managing forms and link documents. So if those are the basic three, you would click on here, and that would take you through. And these are my options, right? So these obviously are paid for. So you would just simply highlight it and then book yourself, right? Besides that, in particular for onboarding training, there are some more others. I mean, there are others, I should say, um, that are related with general training, and that would be under Abacus Law training. So these don't have to be in any particular sequence, right? Because this is, let's say, after the fact that you've gone through the onboarding training, then you can go in, click on here, and this is where you're going to see all the different types of classes or certain sessions that we do have to offer. Okay, creating a new matter, creating custom calendar rules. Okay, we sort of went through that, but not in great detail. So if you wanted that one-on-one attention, right, this is going to help you or assist you, walking you through with a trainer, and we can actually, set it up together if you would like. Okay, creating custom reports, customizing the name and matter screens. I don't know if you're into designing your own screens. This is one class for that. If you notice, in a lot of these, you're also going to have some of these register for free webinar auction going on, right? Like this one. This is keeping track of your time. But there was a free webinar on January 22nd that actually talked about somewhat related to this particular class. So under each one of these sessions, there's free webinars that we have to offer. Like today. Today I went over the mastering case creation as the class. Was it enough for you to go back and actually apply everything that you learned today? Was it in enough detail, right? Or maybe you're better off booking a class that's going to then say, okay, um, I did get the gist of it, but I would like to make sure that, you know, that I'm actually creating these new cases, or specific rules or a new matter, whatever the case may be, right? You have the ability, like in this one, this was creating a new matter, and we talked about intake forms, but this is the class that's going to walk you through step by step and give you everything that you need. Okay, so just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. So not only do we have that for onboarding for case and practice management, right, and general training for case and practice management, but we also have that same concept for onboarding for accounting and billing, and then general trainings for accounting and billing as well. Okay, hope this helps. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, I'm going to give it another minute or so. It doesn't look like anything's being asked at this moment. So if after a minute I haven't heard anything, we're going to call it the end of the class. Is there a summary outline of what we went through this morning? Well, there is no summary outline for this particular webinar. However, if you wanted a similar agenda of what's been covered, if you go to Abacus Law, I just mentioned, and you wanted to take a gander on that training, creating a new case or matter, if you click on Abacus Law, creating a new matter, there is a session agenda there for the things that can be covered. There's also a recording of this training. So if you did register, you can ask for the link to be sent back to you for review or to listen to one more time. Yeah, you can request a recording. Just send an email over to the webinar's uh, uh, email distribution, and we will then send you over a link once it's available, of course. Yeah, the webinar that told you that the same email that told you that you had registered for a class today. Just send an email back to webinars. Just reply to that. Okay, that looks like that's the end of the questions. It was a pleasure, and until next time, take care, everyone.